So if a student comes to school who hasn't had any sleep, there's no way they can learn. If a student comes to school hungry, the same thing, or extraordinarily thirsty, there's no way that they can learn. And so part of looking at this hierarchy of needs is that we need to make sure that those needs are taken care of before we can move on. And that's why the public schools have been tasked with feeding our children breakfast and lunch, making sure that we have enough bathrooms. And, of course, breathing is very important as well. But all of those things, from there, we move to safety. And that's when I talk about the community in the classroom. So it's security. It's just mainly in the schools, it's security of your body, your family, your health, and even your property. So if you're, and there's going to be a train coming by, so you might hear some whistling, my apologies. So when we look at the safety and security of students, which is our #1 priority really at the schools, is making sure our students are safe. But if you feel threatened by anyone and you're in a classroom, there's no way you can learn. If somebody keeps taking your things, you are going to be very preoccupied with that, and there's no way that you can learn. Even if you are unsafe at home and you bring that to the classroom, there's also no way that you can learn. And then moving up, it's that sense of love and belonging. And that's where I really feel that the public schools does their best job, is that we create community. We make sure that they trust what's happening in our classroom. The friends that they form at school, everything else, just that. And you all know, as UUers, that the sense of community is so important. So if you weren't familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there it is. So that's what we're trying to do in the schools, and that's what we're trying to do by creating policy with the school board. And I know that Mr. Wofford came and talked to you and spoke with you about policy JBD, taking gender equity and making sure that in our hierarchy of needs, all students are included. From there, I'm going to move to the McKinney-Vento project. So McKinney-Vento is actually, it was actually created in 1987, and it's a US federal law that provides money for homeless shelter programs. This act requires schools to accept homeless children immediately and automatically, regardless of the status of their address or whatever. So any student who's experiencing homelessness. So the funding, which was about $65,000, a little over $65,000 that we received last fall, we used for hotel rooms for families who are experiencing homelessness, gift cards for food and supplies and clothing, help with transportation and emergency services. And so we'll be getting another hunk of that federal funding, and I don't know how much it is. I looked and I couldn't find it, and that will happen in August. But that $65,000 goes very quickly because we do have a large homeless population. And so that there are things that are still needed in Las Cruces for our children. So first of all, their office is located at Valley View Elementary, which is off of Espina, and I wish I knew that side street, but it's right behind the Catholic Church. Oh, and I've lost that as well. I'll remember it.
Blessed Heart or something?
Say that again, Jen.
Is it Blessed Heart or something like that?
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart, that's
yes. It. Thank you so much. Yes, Sacred Heart. It's right behind there. And they have a portable, so you could go into the front office of Valley View Elementary School and ask to go to the portable. And it's actually one of my old students. Her name is Carla Solis, who is running that program, and that's her name right there, Carla Solis. Actually, she got married, Holguin. So any one of these people can help you. Margarita was also one of my students when I taught at Las Cruces High School as well, and I love it that they're doing this advocacy for our community. So there's their information there. here's what they currently need. So they do have the funding and they have done a lot of things, but there are a lot of things that people don't think about donating, like underwear, like feminine hygiene products, excuse me. But here's some just basic things. And I thought maybe you could share with your UU community and see if you can pull together some of the things that they need. And I've shared this slideshow with Dave, and so he's got all this information as well. And so before I move forward, excuse me, does anybody have any questions about the McKinney-Vento project in Las Cruces or nationally?
This is Dave Rice. Sorry, you mentioned quite a few. Can you just put a number on that? I mean, you mentioned $65,000, which frankly doesn't sound like very much money.
Exactly.
And then I think about, well, how many children and how many school days? I mean, the math begins to say, well, we spend pennies a day on these kids or something.
Exactly. Oh, so you're asking how many homeless kids we have in the Las Cruces public schools?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, how many kids do we have, period? And then how many kids do we have that are homeless?
Okay, woo, numbers person.
I'm just curious in the sense of just number, how many homeless? Just answer that one. Sorry.
Okay, well, let me see if I can find it because I am not sure.
Okay, well.
That was information that was not given to me, but I can find it. And there, of course, with that, not of course, but sometimes with that, there comes a lot of shame. And so oftentimes we don't know if kids are homeless or not.
Yeah.
So 566 students in Las Cruces public schools are considered homeless. And homeless is that they lack a regular domicile in which they abide. So they could be living out of their car, they could be living with friends, they could be they could be hopping from one house to the next. So that's how they are defining the homeless students.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And actually, so what I see now is 665. So I would, let's go an average of 600 kids out of, I want to say 200,000 kids in Las Cruces public schools, but I can look that up for you as well.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Are there any other questions? All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to move forward from students' needs and their basic needs and what we're trying to do in the schools to make sure that those needs are met. And we're doing those through community schools, through the McKinney-Vento project, and through teachers just spending a whole lot of their own money trying to make sure that students are fed. I always had food in my classroom and water in my classroom just to make sure that they were fed. So one of the things that we are looking forward to in the Las Cruces public schools at this time is in implementing graduation portfolios rather than doing the standardized testing that we always do at the end of the year. The standardized testing is, of course, a federal initiative because they want to see where the kids fall and they are looking at growth. But as I say in my number one point, testing is an event, an assessment is a process. And I really feel as an educator that testing, standardized testing came about because a lack of trust in teachers was created. How this all started is beyond me. But people needing somebody to blame because they felt that kids weren't doing as well as they should and thought, well, it must be the teacher's fault. But we are educated to be educators, and actually education to be a teacher, I believe is an art form. If you're good and passionate about it, it really is. You can't just walk into a classroom and teach students. You really need the practice and you need the expertise in order to do that. So in looking at assessment as a process, we are looking at graduation portfolios or capstone projects. And through these, the students can better understand, because what the students can do is bring in their identities, their cultural and linguistic heritage, their prior knowledges, their experiences, and all of their skills. And put them all together and say, wow, through my 12 years of education or 13 years of education, here's what I've gained. Here's what I think I still need. And here's how I can move forward. One of the big things is, especially with standardized testing, is that we are not recognizing the cultural and linguistic differences in our student population across the United States. It's very much a white test for white students. So when you add, and we're talking about prior knowledges and experiences, and if we're looking at Native American students, we're looking at the oral traditions that are there, because a lot of those languages aren't written, and how we can incorporate them into their complete education. And the biggest thing, the thing that's most important to me, is that students are true stakeholders in their education, that they are putting together, they are putting aside documents, they're compiling things that they need that reflects who they are and what they've learned. And then we're really looking at 21st century skills. Yes, reading, writing, arithmetic are all super important, but in our 21st century, where we have all of our knowledge in this little phone, we really want to look at critical thinking, innovation, social justice, leadership, looking at our global awareness, and instilling in students the passion for lifelong learning. So our hope, obviously it's not going to happen this year as we are in graduation season already, and I attended graduations all weekend, is starting this hopefully next year, so that everybody who, wherever you are from kinder all the way up to 12th grade, you are starting the process of your portfolio. And the vision that we have is that the students will all gather, maybe at the convention center, maybe we'll do it outside in the plaza downtown, but they will have their presentation, and community members can come in and learn from the students and see how the students are doing and what they have learned throughout their public school experience, which I find super exciting, because really, if we look at education, the sage on the stage is really not applicable to education today. If we are doing the same thing in August 2022 that we did in August 2019, we've got some serious issues. Truly, we can't keep doing the same thing and hope for better results. So, whoops, excuse me. So I believe that was about 20 minutes or so, trying to find my next slide. In encapsulating all of this, it used to be, and one of my big things too, is that I can't find our mission and vision. And when I look on the website, there are a whole lot of things about what we should be doing. But what I remember, and that's what your mission and vision should be, is something where people remember it. I remember Las Cruces Public Schools, where kids come first. And so when I look at that through that lens, when I am on the school board and when I was an educator, that's what I do. Is this putting kids first? And if it's not, then we shouldn't be doing it, because everything that we do should be for the students every single time. It shouldn't be for the adults. It should be for the kids. And so I appreciate you listening to me. And I stand for questions, comments, discussion. I would love to have a discussion with you all about education. And I'm going to stop my share. There it is. Thank you for listening.
You are muted, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. I will be ringmaster and mixing my metaphors. I will also this group of cats. So yeah, thank you very much, Pam. And I'd just like to say, in relationship to your comment about your relationship with the church, that if you need a wake-up call on a Sunday morning, I would be very happy to give that every Sunday morning. So
that sounds perfect. I actually contemplated that this morning, but I attended 3 graduations Friday, 3 graduations Saturday from, I was at the Field of Dreams from for 12 hours both days. So I was a little tired, but yes, I
Oh, yeah.
am.
And
I
then
would love to
school
come
board
back.
meetings that go until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my goodness, that was yeah.
Okay,
Indeed.
Dave Rice has his virtual hand up.
Yes, he does.
Okay, it was interesting, Pamela, and thank you
Mhm.
for your service both as a teacher and now.
Thank you.
So thank
Thank
you.
you.
You didn't mention COVID.
No, I did not.
How did COVID affect what you're doing today? You mentioned 2019 versus 2022. I assume there are a few things that might differ.
Absolutely. So one of the things that has become a true priority is social emotional learning. And once again, I said that people really want us to stress academics. So I probably didn't do that as clearly as I wanted to. People want us to stress academics, but we can't address academics until we can address all of the social and emotional needs that have happened after COVID. We have students who are with a lot of suicide ideation. We have students who did not learn, pretty much gave up during COVID because the virtual learning for them wasn't engaging. It wasn't anything that they felt like they could do. And so even though we didn't do any testing and we relaxed some of the academic things that we were doing and saying, here are the assignments that you need to turn in. Please do this whenever you can. It was too much for kids. And now that they've come back, what I've heard from my teacher friends is that behaviorally and emotionally, they're about 2 years behind. So that there was pretty much a standstill when COVID hit, and so they might have gotten some academic learning, but in the process, their social skills, their behavioral skills, all of that stayed stagnant. So this year has been a year of rebuilding routines and making sure that deadlines are important, making sure that behavioral needs are taken care of. And teachers have come up with some very clever ways to assess what kids need without having a kid say, I can't do this, I'm about to lose it. I used to have different colored pencils, and it would indicate I had 4 moods just to make it easier. So blue was basically you were feeling blue. You just couldn't do it that day. Don't call on me. I just need some time. Red was angry, that there were some anger issues. And so, I may explode. So, just be careful. Yellow was sunny and happy. Everything was all good. Green, what was green? Green was neutral. Green was like, I'm okay. It's okay. I don't really want to indicate anything whatsoever. And so they would just leave the pencils on their desk or hold it up just so I could see it, just so I would know where they are. And so there are clever ways to it. And I had a teacher who she had the plastic bracelets, those elastic bracelets, and the kids could put those on if they wanted to, and they didn't have to take a pencil if they didn't want to. So with COVID, those things have come more to the forefront, and we are seeing huge divides. Granted, we all went through COVID together, and we all experienced loss in some way, which brought us together, but everyone dealt with it differently. I think I'm frozen.
Pam, can you hear us?
Dave, am I frozen?
You are frozen, but we can hear you fine. At least-
Okay. Okay, good.
Pam, are you still there?
The teacher has left the building.
Went to the bathroom.
I hope she has her hall pass.
That's the signal to party, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, while we're on break, let me ask VJ. VJ, did your grandson do a lot of virtual learning while he was pursuing his valedictorian status?
Yes, he did for 2 years. In fact, his sister is here. Let me ask her. Caitlin? Oh, yes, they did.
Okay.
It was all on Zoom or whatever, yes.
That's interesting.
But
I'm
he
sure.
also took courses at the CSU, that's Colorado State University. He took like 5 math courses and other computer science and all. So I think it was all online, either
Well,
online or Zoom or whatever.
Well, great. That's interesting because you mentioned his AI career aspirations, and certainly that's got to change the student as well as the teacher and outcomes. Thank you, VJ.
Yeah.
Actually.
Well, and I imagine, I've not seen data on this, but I imagine that the virtual learning environment was one that worked well for some students and was just an abject failure for many others. So kids who are doing well or highly motivated,
Mhm.
the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, well in place, that they were able to thrive in that environment. But other kids, it was really too taxing, overly taxing. Pamela, are you hearing this discussion?
I am, thank you.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to log in on my phone. I just have had issues, but yes, I heard the last part of that. And absolutely, some kids did very, very well. But I would have to say, I'd say about a third of the kids did well and 2/3 of the kids just did not do well at all. Couldn't connect. And once again, that creation of community, if you don't have the community and the trust of your students, it's really hard to get them to be engaged. So I'm just going to leave my camera off and see if that helps with my internet.
Okay, well, yeah, as I said, we can hear you just fine. So I'm concerned with the impact that COVID and this virtual learning environment that was difficult to adapt to for so many children. How are they ever going to be able to catch up? What plans are in place to try to mitigate the deficits that came along with COVID?
And that's a great question. And one of the ways that we have done that is by creating the balanced calendar, which I know has had mixed feelings amongst the public. And I think it was mainly because of the time frame that we put it through. But when we are only giving the kids 10 extra days of learning, that's pretty much it. But you have those 10 extra days to create community, to see a friendly face, to get some food to eat, to work on whatever academic skills you are lacking. And a lot of the schools have put tutoring programs into place to help with that. And we don't like to say learning loss, because truly during those years of COVID, it was a different kind of learning. It was learning the technology. It was learning how to be self-sufficient and how to motivate yourself on your own when you didn't have a teacher looking over you saying, hey, how about that? How'd you get that done? So, but those kids who didn't have
Worry that we've lost her again.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Back on.
We can hear you. Don't mumble.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. So sorry. I mumbled, but I didn't say anything bad. So that's one of the ways that we are starting to work at there is probably some academic deficiencies, but I hate to call it learning loss because there was a whole different kind of learning going on in most households, whether it was parents helping their kids or whether it was kids being on their own and trying to get things figured out. So that's what we're working on. We're also working on reducing the standardized testing, having the students take charge of their learning, and doing those graduation portfolios, not just at the end of their entire school career, but at each stage of their learning, so that you have an elementary portfolio, you have a middle school portfolio and a high school portfolio, all being presented, and all those students taking charge of what they're learning and what they're lacking. Does that make sense?
Yes. Other questions or comments? Yes, Jack.
Hi, Pam. Thank you so much for giving up your Sunday afternoon after your graduation marathons.
It is my pleasure. My pleasure to be here. Good to see you, Jack.
Yeah, I have a question about the balanced calendar.
Mhm.
I logged on the staff, that is the Las Cruces Central Office staff, that was discussing that before the school board. Bill Soul spoke to the group advocating it, and Dr. Tomlin and some of the others. And the word that came up several times was not more of the same. In other words, the increased time will not be more of the same type of instruction, but would open up opportunities for innovative instruction or experiential learning. And I see that as a great opportunity, but it's also a great challenge for the teachers. And I notice Sarah Thomas, who's an excellent teacher, retired, is with us. And just how do you envision the teachers are going to change their mode of instruction to include life experiences or other types of non-traditional learning, which I think would be wonderful if the teachers have the creative ability to do that. So Pam and Sarah.
That's a great question. Sarah, do you want to go first?
All right, unmuting there. I'm really just a sub now. And I've observed all of the above that you guys have been talking about. I've observed that in the many schools that I've been in. And yeah, the behavior has been really hard. And obviously you notice the academic deficit, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly in the lower grades. You know, when I go down to like second grade and sub there, you're looking at kids that essentially, you know, they miss so much. And they missed how to behave in a classroom, and they missed, you know, what learning looks like. And so some of them are still kind of stuck in that. And you're right, we have to get the socioeconomic, you know, the patterns in of Maslow's hierarchy before we can really work on the academics. It's sort of like all of it needs to happen at once.
Mm-hmm.
But some schools are definitely more stuck in it than others. There's certain schools I won't go back to. It's just too hard.
Yes.
Yeah, for an older teacher, for a young one maybe. But anyway, what was the question again? Sorry.
It's okay, Sarah. So
I've been sick. I'm just trying to listen mostly.
it's all right. So Jack was asking how we are taking those extra days that are supposed to be for experiential learning, for learning enhancement, and how we're going to put those into the curriculum so that it works.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. And my teacher friends have also had a few things to say about that.
And so right now, if I may, Sarah, right now, we are leaving it up to the individual schools to see if there is something that they want to do school-wide, to see if there's what their particular needs are, and then move forward with that. And we've given teachers the autonomy to use those days for enhancing the curriculum, for doing some experiential learning. But those teachers who feel like, if you give me one more thing, I'm going to explode, which there are many, because truly we have the weight of the world is on their shoulders. And if you remember first At first, in the pandemic, all the parents said, we should be paying teachers $5 gajillion. This is really hard work. I never want to do it again. To, you all are terrible. Just take our kids back. Anyway, so if there are those teachers who say, truly, this is not what I want, then the district, we have a lot of instructional experts in the district who will step in and help them to make those things happen. So I know it's like, for example, Central Elementary is putting in a greenhouse and gardening. And what they're going to do is they're going to partner with the ag students at Las Cruces High School. And those students from Las Cruces High School are going to come in and show the kids how to plant, how to water, and how to take care of all of the stuff that they're doing in the nursery. So creating partnerships like that throughout the district, those are some of the ideas. At Oregon Mountain High School, they have a building construction class where a group of 30 students built a home. It's currently in the showcase of homes as one of the special homes. And I don't know where it is. I haven't gone to see it yet, but all of those students, what they had math, they had geometry, they had critical thinking skills, they had all of it as they put together and they built this house. They had to figure out financing, they had to figure out cost of materials from the ground up. They put together a house, and that kind of experiential learning you just can't replace. Mayfield High School has an automotive mechanic class where they work on cars. So they are really doing that work so they know what's going on. And my hope is that we create these programs within our schools where you have the experiential learning, where if you wanted to go into cosmetology, you could take some classes and get your high school diploma at the same time as you got your cosmetology license, or your welding license, or your automotive mechanic license, because we are missing out on that beautiful part of our society. We are not educating people to be service workers, to do carpentry, plumbing, electric. And so if we can take that on in the public schools, which we have before, and we can do it again, and move away from, we want everyone to go to college. Higher education for everybody is not the ultimate goal. We want to create students that have a successful post-secondary career, no matter what they do. Military, jobs, highly qualified jobs, or going on to university to get more learning to then move on to those professions. And I don't know if I answered that completely, Jack, but that's where we're moving in those experiential learning opportunities.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I had in mind. And the examples you gave, I think, will be very educational and will be very successful. I think some of it, I predict some teachers will come up with ingenious ways of using the additional time, but many of the teachers will need help in how to create something unique in that regard.
I agree. And I'm looking forward to the community coming in and saying, hey, I see where we need it, where this is a need that we have. Can I come in and work with your students? It's a whole community effort. It's not the schools. If we as a community don't support education, we're going to be in a whole lot of trouble. I'm sorry, Sarah, I think I spoke over you.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say project-based learning was what we were doing in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful to have a goal, a task, a team, a challenge like that. Kids learning how to work with others is a huge piece of getting along in the world. My question was, what's happening with accelerated classes in middle school? Is that going to be gone for a while or just a little while?
Oof, that's a hot topic, and one that, if I can say, I don't agree with how Las Cruces Public Schools is currently doing it. So what they have done is they have left it up to the principals at all of the middle schools and to see whether honors classes will be offered or not. I believe that they should still be in the middle schools. I gave the example at a board meeting that when we have specialized classes for students. So if you, for example, if you say that 100 is the average IQ, and we go 30 points below that or 40 points below that, we really need specialized classes because their brains work differently. So same as if we go 30 points or 40 points above it, we need specialized classes because their brains work differently. It truly, it's both sides of the spectrum, and we can't. And one very sweet middle school student said it. She said, if we have classes for kids on the lower end of the spectrum, why can't we have them for kids on the higher end of the spectrum? So it's truly a thing. Go ahead, Sarah.
Just a couple of comments about that. The gifted underachiever or underachieving gifted students
Yes.
is a significant amount of them, and they'll be bored out of their tears and, you know, not want to go to school. And that's
Agreed.
bad. The other thing is, oh, sorry, my brain fog. If some middle schools are offering accelerated and some aren't, here's what some of those parents will do. They'll move their kids over to the ones where there's accelerated classes, and you'll have a sort of a brain drain thing going on where the high end kids are going to end up moving to the same schools, and it's going to skew everything. So it'll be a
agree.
mess.
It will be a hot mess. I agree. So even taking them away for 1 year, I think is not a great idea, mainly because of all of the things that you said, Sarah. Thank you. It remains to be seen, but I am fighting for those coming back, especially in middle schools. And what you find is really smart kids are not engaged because they're bored, and then they won't come to school, and they're not motivated to do anything.
Yeah,
It's a bad circle.
Hey, Dave Rice, do you have your hand up once again?
Yeah, in connection perhaps with this is you use the phrase students need to be stakeholders in their learning. I can't I imagine a view of a second grader of what you just said, and a freshman in the high school contemplating honors courses. They would have different takes on that. Can you expand on stakeholder as a student concept?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Dave. And what I mean by that is that that they're a stakeholder, but they take ownership of their learning. So even as a second grader, you can, or even as a kindergartner, you can say, what was your favorite assignment that you did this year? What was the best thing that you learned? And that makes that reflection piece, which we often don't give kids, allows them to really say, and it'll mature as they move on. So if you're looking at a junior and you're saying, hey, throughout your educational career, what is it that you've learned? What is it that you found helpful? Also, where are your gaps? Where do you feel like you really needed that skill, but you didn't get it? This also will help us with figuring out our curriculum and making sure. I really feel like financial literacy should be a mandatory course in high school, but that's just me. So that's more than being, Dave, a stakeholder. It's taking ownership of their education rather than saying the teachers have to teach me this. And what grade did I get? What grade did you give me? Which were words I always hated to hear. Is like, you earned this. And grades are a whole nother conversation, but taking ownership of what they've learned, having that reflection piece, having those artifacts that they felt were special, and putting them together. And each year they go back and they look at all of their artifacts. That helps create this whole, here's my schooling, but it's mine. It's my learning. I'm taking ownership of it. Here's what I didn't pay attention in geometry, and now I need to construct a house, and I don't know what an obtuse angle is or whatever. So those things. Does that help, Dave?
Yeah, the other element of that, it seems to me, is the what I call mental health side of it. I can see students are smarter than we sometimes think they are. They're aware of how the guy in the next or gal in the next desk is doing on things, and with not a whole lot of effort, the less capable and maybe the less resource can develop a terrible self-image.
Mm.
And then that tends to roll downhill. And it just, when you said the idea of owning your stakeholder, I could just see how a person, maybe a homeless kid or something, would just be in such a hole that that would become a mental as well as a educational problem. So that's what I was thinking, but it's helpful to try to, it seems to be the idea, it appeals to me. At the same time, I can see it being a challenge.
Absolutely. And
So
I
thank you.
appreciate, yes, and I appreciate that other point of view, because I'm just thinking, you know, that's great. They can reflect, but if you have students with migrant parents who go from school to school to school, and yeah, students, yes, that is, thank you. You gave me some great food for thought. I really need to ponder that, because I need to make sure, you know, there's equal and there's equitable. And I want to make sure that everything is equitable. Equal, everybody has the same thing. Equitable, people get what they want. People get what they need. Does that make sense?
Thank you. You're a good Unitarian.
Thank you. That makes me proud.
Dan, I just saw you turn your microphone mute off. Does that mean you have a question or a comment?
I have a comment. I was just going to say that, except I think I've forgotten what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Because I have a question. I'll call upon myself.
Okay.
I'm really interested over the past year in the efforts made by the State Board of Education to revise and revamp its approach to teaching history and social studies. I'm curious as to how those efforts were received by the parents of children in the Las Cruces public school system. Did you get a lot of support for that or a lot of pushback on those?
So we have gotten a lot of support from parents, and we have gotten a lot of very vocal pushback from people in the community, and some who don't even have kids in the public schools. And so that's been the hardest part for me, is that when we look at CRT, which is culturally responsive teaching, and even if you look at CRT in the critical race theory, we of course do not teach critical race theory. That's a graduate level, doctoral level theory, where, you know, you look at race and how it's impacted everything throughout history. We don't. But the culturally responsive piece is incredibly important. And so that in my belief, we have revamped our social studies curriculum in a way that requires and encourages our students to be free thinkers about what's happening in history, and understanding that many historical events have been told and retold, and told with a bias, and told with different points of view, and so that they can look at the events, and then with those critical thinking skills that are so important, create their own thoughts and their own interpretation. Because really, when you look at events, there are a lot of what I see when we leave this, I will have a different interpretation of how this roundtable went, as opposed to Annette or to Sarah. So making them aware of the different viewpoints, it's very important. And so what the pushback that we've gotten mainly from people is that they are concerned that we are telling all people of color and women that they're victims, and that we only have victors and victims, and that's all that we have in the world, and that they don't want to be referred to as a victim. And I don't understand how they're getting that from our curriculum. It's open, anyone can take a look at it and make sure that those standards fit the grade level and everything else. But that's the main pushback that we've been getting. But from parents, it's been very favorable, and also from educators, because it's about darn time.
Thank you. Jan, do you remember?
Yes, I remember. It only took 5 minutes, but rather than, well, in the middle school and high school, stakeholder makes some sense. In elementary school, I would go back to your statement of purpose, what you remember the purpose being, Pam, of children first, children everything. And that if you're doing that, the children in elementary school will become stakeholders because they will feel that they belong. And when you do CRT, you are making them feel that they belong, and you're showing them examples of people they can relate to and experiences that they've heard in their home. And so they're stakeholders whether they know it or not, but just by putting them first, rather than a curriculum that somebody made up somewhere else that is designed to move them into college, when not all of them are going to college or want to go to college. And we don't want them all to go to college because we want those auto mechanics,
Yes, we do. Absolutely. Thanks, Jan. That's a great point. And just, Annette, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yes. I mean, I have a client who owns an auto repair shop, and he does have a PhD in mechanical engineering, and he is perfectly fine with that. I mean, I know it costs a fucking fortune in this country,
Yes, it does.
to do that, and then but he enjoys doing hands-on work rather than sitting in an office all day. So, we cannot put people in a friggin' box. So if someone wants to have the best of both worlds, don't talk them out of it. What the heck? And if my hairdresser wants to study philosophy just to have something to chat about while I'm sitting there getting, another hair color, don't discourage people from that. What the hell? People, why don't you fight for free college instead? Wouldn't that make so much more sense?
Well, we have it for at least a year.
Well, la-di-da. But
Okay.
also, I would think that oh no, I lost my train of thought. Shoot. I'm thinking when you're going through your first 12 years of schooling, you don't really know yet what is really helpful later in life. Nobody ever tests you 10 years out of school or 20 years later or 30 years later. I mean, I have no idea what on a daily basis I'm actually using, that I learned in high school, or the equivalent thereof. Sure, I use chemistry all the time when I'm cooking dinner. I'm not actually aware of it. And I'm also using, physics by heating up food. Yes. Not the theory of it, but the application of it. And if we probably would get that point across, more kids would pay attention.
Okay, Sarah, I see you have your hand up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had a question, but I was sitting there listening to Annette thinking about that. I thought back to elementary school when we used to make pies for Pie Day with my advanced math kids. And, you know, I made them, you know, like practice doubling and quadrupling different items and math and skills and following directions. And yeah, they had to like pass a little test before I'd let them in the kitchen and make the pies. It was a good thing. It was fun. Anyway, I was just thinking about that. My question was for Pamela about what's going to happen with the future for virtual learning. I'm curious if we have a thought about that, or are we just going to wait and see what happens with COVID?
So our goal is to keep students in school in person as long as we can, for as much as we can, just because we have seen already the detriments from that. But our virtual learning academy is up and running, and we do have, and once again, I think Dave is going to ask me how many, I don't know how many, but we have quite a few students enrolled in either full-time virtual learning or part-time virtual learning. That the virtual learning isn't going to go away. But personally, I don't think it will ever replace in-person learning. I really, I know that's a very conventional way to look at it, but that person to person, that creation of community, the learning together, those critical thinking skills, that cooperation, those 21st century skills that we need must be done with in-person learning.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, I remember that discussion at the higher education level. We had professors who were teaching classes on the television. We didn't use the internet at that time, but there was a lot of discussion about, you know, should we be doing classes on television, or should we have the students come in so that you can have eye contact and know if you're getting through to them and all this stuff. And basically it came down to, it is preferable to be in the classroom if you can get there. But we had a lot of rural students and people in other states even who were able to access their education through the television that they would not have gotten it at all if they were required to be in the classroom. So there's a preference, I think, for in-person, but you know, you need to have options for those that can't get there.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of homebound students. We've always had homebound students.
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Okay, well, with that, Jan gets the last word. Okay, I want to thank you again, Pam, for agreeing to spend part of your Sunday afternoon with us. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Dave,
And I also want to thank you for your years of service to our students and your continuing service. In my opinion, you teachers have the most important jobs in our country. And I hope, and I doubt that I will ever see the day when you are compensated accordingly. So,
Truth. Thanks, Dave.
okay.
Dave Steele. Before we let Pam go, I would like just a very brief comment. How did the commencements at Field of Dreams go Friday and Saturday?
Beautifully. We saved the district $100,000. It is we need to make a change because those middle of the day commencement exercises were miserable. It was just, and we were only in the 90s, but it was just too hot. So I think that we should do morning and evening, skip the middle of the day and just spread it out over some more days. But the Field of Dreams is ours. It's Las Cruces Public Schools. Being outdoors in the beautiful New Mexico mornings and evenings, it was beautiful and I loved it. And so I hope that we continue doing them, but fixing the schedule a little bit so nobody's in a black robe sitting in the hot sun in the middle of the day.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for being here, and just a quick reminder that next week we are scheduled to have Delgado Medina, local artist and member of the indigenous communities in Las Cruces, who will be sharing his perspective on life in Las Cruces for his community. And also I'm hoping that we'll address the issue of NSU's planning for its commercial development of the area around Tortuga Mountain. And hopefully they're going to be mindful of the needs that our indigenous communities have for preserving the sanctity of that space. So look forward to seeing you all next week. And again, thank you very much, Pam. And I trust that I do have in my inbox your PowerPoint. I'll be happy to share it with anyone who would like it.
You got it. Thank you so much for the time. And I learned so much from you all today. So thank you all for sharing your insights. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Bye.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So long, everyone.
All right.